All right, hello everyone. It's mysticjuicer back with some more Yomi action. This is round 2 of 19XX, playing against UTRALAW, and starting off with Midori. Midori, I definitely wanted to give this time around in this tournament. I wanted to give Midori a real shot. I've enjoyed him as a counter pick against Gloria in the past. But have not really played him with any real kind of serious effort. He's always been kind of a convenient counter pick. And then in formats like this where I can't pick Troc, which is my usual grappler pick, and I don't want to pick Rook typically, figured, hey, if I want to play a grappler, let's play a grappler. So that's sort of my reasoning for going into it. And you saw how that reasoning kind of came to nearly bite me in the butt in round 1. So see if we can do a better job of it in this instance. So I queue into Midori versus Argagarg. It can be a challenging matchup for Midori, but it's definitely a matchup I feel relatively good about, especially considering how bad it's kind of. I feel like it's fairly in the middle of Rook versus Argagarg, which is completely terrible for Rook, and Troc versus Argagarg, which is pretty darn good for Troc. I would put this at fairly even, maybe slightly Midori advantaged. I'm not sure. Just go in with huge damage. That is one thing that is really, really delightful about playing Midori, is that he's a grappler that can just go in and go in super hard. His top end is the highest of any of the grapplers. He has a true, massive damage combo off of his queen, which is reversal speed. But he pays for that in a variety of different ways. So all I'm going to do in terms of my general game plan against UTRALAW here is I'm going to block until I've got a good hand, and then once I've got a good hand that I can convert into damage, then we're going to go in. I'm going to try to minimize the number of risks that I need to take. Again, I've got my 2s, so I want to play my 2s kind of as I get them and as I have a hand to support them. And if they get countered, then that's fine. They go to the bottom of the deck, especially since I don't have any of my aces yet. As I power up, I'm going to shuffle those 2s around. I'm going to get an opportunity to draw into them more in the future. So I'm spending a 10 here where I ordinarily probably wouldn't. Just because he's already at, what was he at? 40 something? Yeah, 47 hit points. And each of these kings is going to take a real large chunk of change out of Argagarg. So we're already essentially at, one more spun king, and we found lethal. We've got a good amount of dodges, which is what we want here in the late game. We want to have opportunities to be able to sneak around pokes without having to play our own queens, and risk running into ace blocks. So far so good. We get a little bit of damage put on us, but it certainly could be worse. We've got a queen, so we can go in with some damage. Yeah, there we go. And anytime we find a successful combat win with a queen, we can really convert that into some larger damage output compared to the king, right? You spin the king, you're getting 5 damage. You spin the queen, you're getting 4 just from the spin, and then you can tack on a 7 or an 8 or double jacks if you have it for a massive amount of burst. So we're doing pretty good here. We basically just have to play grappler games. One of the perks of playing a grappler is not having to play attacks to beat Argagarg. So you can play a pure throw block dodge game, taking Bubble Shield entirely off the table. It's not always going to be successful, so can't bank on that, but certainly it is possible. Just going to go in with more throws, why not? Yeah, if you're going to get greedy with throws, then I will not be discouraged either. So I think UTRALAW has a bit of the right idea here in the late game, where he's being far more aggressive. He's putting a lot of throws on the table, mixing them up with attacks. I think generally all of the grapplers can kind of struggle to deal with an Argagarg that plays very aggressively with both throws and attacks. Because you do want to protect yourself. You know, I think typically, or at least speaking only for myself, I much prefer to play against a block attack range, right? That way I can always feel safe. If I'm feeling pressured or if I'm feeling unsettled, I can always settle back to block and know that at worst I'm going to tie combat. If a character is playing a lot of attacks and then mixing in throws, then that's you know where trouble can start for me. Okay, so again, just settling into a very defensive style of play. We threw an awful lot in the previous game, so I'm hoping that fear will get me some additional freedom here in this next game. It's very important to keep track of the combat reveal after an ace block combat reveal. It's kind of the same concept of paying attention to what your opponent does on when they're knocked down or when you're knocked down, right? Generally, if you're in the neutral and you both have kind of high hand sizes, there's a kind of expectation of what's reasonable to play and what people will tend to do, but there's less of a... It feels harder to predict in my mind. Whereas when either side of the fight is knocked down, there tends to be kind of a, I don't know, things kind of crystallize around that repeated action, right? You have, it's like, okay, that last time anytime you knock someone down, you think, okay, last time I knocked them down, or the past couple times I knocked them down, how did they react? It tends to provoke a response, whereas standing here in neutral tends to feel more broad, right? You can, standing here in neutral in the early game versus in the mid game versus in the late game, those are three very different states. So it can feel, I don't know, less predictable what is happening at any given point or what could happen at any given point. So that would be something that I would suggest to newer players, is to keep an eye out on what is happening when, or the history of what has happened when either of you has been knocked down. And that kind of thing can also happen at kind of repetitive points in a given matchup. So when Geiger, for example, enters Temporal Distortion, what did they do, right? Like that's something you want to kind of want to keep an eye on for your own purposes. And what an ARG player does after revealing for the first time that they have an ace, right? Or reveals that they have an ace you didn't expect them to have, is something to look at as well. So here we've got took a bit of a lead, or started to take a bit of a lead with throw into Jack for some big damage. Throwing into huge Tatsu is so delightful. It's one of the most satisfying combat reveals, I feel like, of all of the grapplers. Okay, yeah, get hit with the blowfish spikes here, which is not ideal, certainly. But it does get the aces out of his hand, which is nice. I was hoping that he would feel that I was pressured to play a queen, but Given that he had two aces, it also makes sense to just reveal the two aces. I, in fact, did not have a block to play at all. So, tough spot there. So he just bubble spiked me, or blowfish spiked me. I don't expect him to do that twice in a row. So I'm going to go for a kind of greedy throw here. I was hoping to find one of the aces. But I'm going to count myself lucky that I just did not get blown up by like an 8 throw. So we've got him knocked down. We know he has two aces in hand. So wake up ace is something we need to think about. And just wake up block is also something we need to think about. So I'm going to bank on him feeling pressured and wake up with aces. And we were half correct in that we predicted half as many aces as we thought we would see. Okay, block out a dodge. Perfectly fine. I just... Yeah, so now that we've drawn another throw, I'm going to hold on to the 3. Can be tempting to hold on to the 5 maybe and throw with the 3 so we can combo into the 5, but we don't have him at a life total where that makes a lot of sense. So just using the 5 as our aggressive move, since it is a dedicated aggressive card. Yeah, we get undercut. I'm probably going to eat an additional 16 here. Yeah, we're going to gamble with the queen because the dodges, I feel, are more valuable. The aces are more valuable, and the block is more valuable than that card. Perhaps it would make sense to hold on to it compared to 10. But I think I would rather have... I'd rather have the block, so I can't give up a 3. I'm not tossing in any of the aces, so it's between a queen and a 10. And I think that's fairly close. Having dodges in this game state where it's, you know, fairly advanced in terms of the game is not a bad place to be. Going to go for an aggressive throw here, expecting him to keep pressuring off the threat of blowfish spikes, so we have to indicate that we are not going to be entirely cowed by that. Just put him on his back. Also maintains the game clock for us since we don't get hexed this turn. And we appear to be thinking between dodge and 6. 6 protects us against block. Dodge deals with him finally pulling the trigger. So we get around that nicely. If he doesn't face down here, we're probably going to toss ace at him. We end up doing it anyway. Luckily, it is not real, so we get to put him down to 9. And we do have lethal off of the 10 throw. Okay, now we have a reasonable throw to actually play here. Now, granted, we did toss him as our winning combat in the last game, so that's again something that is going to stick in people's minds. So it's something we need to consider whether we want to continue to play that way or whether we're going to put a dodge out there instead. 18 hit points. This is certainly within lethal range of an attack. We haven't yet found our Joker, so this is a nice spot to bluff anyway. And luckily, he didn't have a king and another high normal, which would have killed us from that spot. So we draw into our lethal play here. Either way, we're going to die, either by getting our dodge thrown or by tossing him. Unless, of course, we get a tie result. So we spent a fair amount of our dodges, so again, dodges become less likely as time goes on. And we have an opportunity to take lethal here. This is a good Joker setup if he has it, but it doesn't appear that he does. And we manage to escape and go up 2-0 in the set. So we're going to stick with Midori, see if UTRALAW decides to switch out. UTRALAW typically plays De Grey, if I'm remembering correctly. So not an option in this format, as it is a banned character format, and De Grey is one of the banned characters. Argagar makes a lot of sense, I think, given the De Grey background. He's kind of like a more defensive, lower damage output version of De Grey in some ways, in the sense that he has that, recurring single ace with a defensive ability. So given our relatively good success in the first couple of games, we're going to just stick with what we have. If something is working and our opponent doesn't seem to be making drastic changes in how they're approaching the game, then it doesn't make sense for us to modify the game that we're playing. So after the last game, I don't know if I would characterize as the last game as being particularly throw heavy. I feel like but again, it just happened and I already can't remember it. Dealing with a bit of burrito mind. Okay. All right, so we're definitely being pretty aggressive here in the early game. And for throw, attack, throw, and are forcing a response of more aggressive plays from our opponent. So of course we're going to double down some, see if we can maintain that pressure. Yeah, no need to spin here. 12 damage is just fine. Gives us an life equalizing opportunity. We don't have a hand that can really do much of anything except continue to sit back and block and play the occasional throw. We are starting to accumulate some ammo, but again, hopefully this high aggression play is going to force him to adapt into our kind of weak hand and give us some additional cards. Probably the worst thing that could happen for us here is that he decides to start blocking a lot. Getting thrown is not great, but it's not terrible. Is going to keep him at relatively the same size hand, and this can also give us a 50-50 shot to block for a card. Okay, instead he gets the better of the exchange, gets to pick up a card of his own, and we're still stuck in a kind of awkward spot here. Yeah, there we go. So now UTRALAW is finding that rhythm that I particularly dislike in ARG players, which is lots of poking, lots of tossing. It's something that Rook in particular has a really hard time dealing with, and I think Midori is also somewhat weak to that style of play, at least the preferred style of play that I like to do. Okay, we managed to find our way around the 50-50, pick up some additional fuel, and are starting to really develop this hand now into something that we can hopefully work with. So this is a complete bluff. I have no like fuel or power off of dragon form. So yeah, glad that I didn't play the second one, because really all we wanted to happen there was just turn that 2 into a more useful card. And we were able to do that. So now he may get the sense like, oh, okay, well, if you tried to go into dragon form there, probably you have a pretty good hand. So maybe I need to be thinking about queen. Maybe I need to be thinking about jack. So playing the jack there kind of makes sense in both ways. Like if I only have some jacks, then that ties, and he's got a bit of a life lead here, so tying is perfectly fine. And if I didn't have queens and wanted to use that opportunity to kind of bait him into blocking, then the jack deals with throws quite well. So not going to follow that up, because just taking the knockdown suits me just fine. Again, we don't have a hand that can really afford to go in super, super hard. So no reason to get particularly frisky here. We can afford to let him spend some cards and some fuel. Try to get a bit of value. So he's at 55. If we can find 2 more aces, that's going to be well in view of lethal. And we can try to go for something here as well. So generally, I would agree it makes a lot of sense for Argagarg to focus his counters on the 2s rather than the 10s. 2s are going to stick around over multiple turns. So, and the 2s are the only way that Midori gets to activate his super throw. So long as you either have 10s to deal with the 2s or have jokers, you are only ever exposed to 20 damage worth of risk off of a super throw. Well, if you counter the 10s, you only have to deal with 20 damage worth of hit point loss through Wrath of Earth. So same kind of way of limiting the damage from 52 down to 20. So now we've played some aggressive attacks. You might be expecting us to run out of red cards and play a king or something. Now, some gutsy dodges here, unless they are in fact backed up by 10s. So we'll find out if he's got another 10 now. He does not. So he is making a call on our hand, not having much fuel left in it. And we're going to encourage him to think that that is the case. Picks up single A. Picks up double A. So 2 aces and 4 mystery cards. I haven't been tracking his discard too well, so I don't know how many throws he still has left. We are in a situation where we can play to lose to throw just on the basis of his hand size, right? He can only have 4 possible cards in his hand that are throws. So based on how many he's already spent in the game so far, we can maybe make a call about how likely it is that he has one and start opening ourselves up to being tossed, because it's less likely that he could even toss us in the first place. Okay, I'm just going to sit back. These are not winning combats for us right now, and I really wish we had picked up an ace or a joker or something. That would make me feel much more comfortable. But we're not in the worst spot in the world. We've got a lot of damage off these queens, kings, and aces. So I'm going to be continuing to block, looking for dodges, which will open up the mix-up off of the ace. Yeah, we're just going to convert the queens into throws. That's all we really need. Getting more throws in our hand means he has to push the attack button every once in a while, which means that we can get blocks off, which means that we can recur our dodges. And very gutsy throw on his part there with the 7 after seeing the Wrath of, or the ace power up off the queens. So nicely spotted. We are in a very tricky pickle here. Essentially, if he plays ace-ace, we're dead. Unless we have a dodge, that will absolutely be true. So expect him to play ace-ace here. Instead, we get the throw, which is nice. We pretty much have to take the knockdown. If we threw him with the 8, he'd be at 29, and only a single combat reveal gets us there, really. Either jack into double ace or queen into jack-jack. So can't afford to do that. And a lot more blocks than I'm expecting. I'm expecting just ace-ace to come out here. We are at 1 remaining hit point, so it has to be either dodge into a knockdown or knockdown itself. Yeah, so we have to throw with the 3. There's no other option. Yeah, and that is that. We finally get the revealed checkmate. Of course, he couldn't know that I didn't have another dodge, but nevertheless. So we go 2-1. We're still ahead in the set, and now we have an opportunity to counterpick hard if we want to. And I'm pretty sure. Oh no, okay, just stick with Midori. Okay. The harder counterpick would just be to switch to Gloria, but the matches have been. I felt comfortable enough in the Midori matches that Frarolo representing the ARG love in chat. But yeah, no, I felt relatively comfortable in the matchups. They've been interesting games, but again, we're ahead 2-1, so no real reason to start panic switching. Yeah. So opening up aggressive and getting punished right out the gate for it. So we may yet see a glorious switch in the future here. Now we're doing the typical grappler dance. Throw and lose, switch to block and lose. UTRALAW getting some nice mileage off of this early aggression. Now we do have the means to quickly acquire more aces if we want to. Okay, UTRALAW switching back to attacks. And we're accumulating the aces quite naturally without any absurd assistance. We found our 2, so once we decide to go into dragon form, we've got the fuel we need. But for now, we're basically just playing this 6 over and over again. Other option would be just to play ace-ace, or king, yeah. Find some damage. There we go. Even things up a little bit. Closing the lead anyway. And yeah, all 4 aces. So this is, if he doesn't counter this, we have an opportunity to do very, very mean things. And the counter gives us another dragon form. So of course we calculated and kept, didn't play our first dragon form until we had the second, because we are incredibly smart and good players. So we get lucky with the combat reveal. He's expecting queens or some such. And no face down, because how could you have drawn 4 aces in the top, what, yeah, 11 cards? And all of a sudden this match is looking pretty much over. We've got 2 dodges still left. We can try to pressure off of blocking, just getting a whole bunch more cards in hand. I believe I'm throwing here just to speed things along. So ordinarily I don't encourage this because, you know, what have you got left after this? But, you know, 52 damage goes a heck of a long way. He's not got a very developed hand either, because a lot of our combat wins have been off throws, and a lot of his combat wins have been throws and special attacks. Which means that he's not drawing anything. So the only real risk of playing this queen is if he has another ace and happens to play it right now. We're in real trouble. So I'm more tempted just to play this dodge, and if we happen to win the dodge, then we can tag this queen on top, and that'll be that. Okay, now we don't have to spend the queen at all, it turns out. Just dodge and throw with 10 and keep the queen for future combat reveals. So I'm not sure what I'm looking for in the chat. Maybe the first couple turns of play, how things went. But a bit of a stolen game there. I mean, if you find 4 aces completely silently there and happen to hit with them in the super early game when your opponent's not expecting them, that can happen, especially with the high damage output of Midori. So UTRALAW having a long think about how he wants to handle how that last game felt, whether he wants to go for a character switch or stick with Argagarg. Now, of course, he's in a position where no matter what character he picks here, I will get, if he wins, I will get several opportunities to counterpick. So instead, he's going to stick to Argagarg. Not a bad choice. Argagarg is pretty high tier in this format historically. Typically, it's gone. Setsuki is kind of the character that has the best time of this format of the remaining cast, and then Argagarg is not far behind Setsuki. But a lot of different characters have had pretty good success in the format. But definitely Setsuki, Argagarg are the ones that have had the most. Yeah, please don't win. I'm allergic to other people winning. Makes my eyes water. So we're gonna go for this wake up throw, which has never worked in this set so far. And that trend is going to continue at least one more at least one more time. Yeah, nice combo, picks up an ace. We've got a handful of bombs, and luckily pick up a block. So of course, since we got thrown and then hit, we're going to go for a throw, trying to counter throw, and then we're probably going to get hit. Yep. Yeah, UTRALAW is really adjusting really well from the first 2 games. Being much more aggressive, especially in the opener, where Midori is least equipped to exercise his game plan or his advantage. Ooh, that's a combat loss you hate to see. Losing a losing a dodge to a 6 attack, taking 17 damage. having not yet put a scratch in Argagarg's paint. So we've got a long way to climb, and we're just going to continue being aggressive because I don't feel like losing to throws, I guess. Yeah, there we go. Eventually, we'll win combat. Deny the perfect. Okay, there we go. We found a 2. I'm actually surprised I'm not immediately pushing the 2 button. Yeah, we're going to go for some more ace tricks here. See if we can get dragon form off. Nope, we are denied. So we're back in the waiting game. Unfortunately, that 2 is now permanently stuck to the bottom of our deck. We have all of our aces in our hand, so we have no ability to shuffle. I really do not see a reason why we would go in with a throw. Yeah. So it's either ace-ace or the block. So it should have been the ace-ace. But we pretty much need to wait for a 2 to show up. We're in a game state right now where we need to deal 52 damage to get back in this set, or back in this game. Yeah, so we're going to go for the block. Yeah. So the wake-up throw would have finally have worked, but holding on to that single dodge is much more important to me. Probably going to continue. Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's block or throw until we find a 2, so I'm not mad at either option. Yeah, no reason to go in. We can continue to keep his hand relatively low, which is good. It's going to make it a little bit more difficult, or that much more difficult for him to accumulate ace-ace, which is the dominant speed attack. Fortunately, he keeps finding 10s. So that is essentially 2 permanently countered 2s. Now I have, the reason I'm kind of potentially pulling the trigger on that 9 throw is that he does play rather defensively when he's knocked down. Luckily, we avoid getting exploderated there, but still, we are dying by inches here, desperately trying to find 2 in our deck. But fairly low odds, it looks like. Okay, undercutting a 4 is fine. We can power up our 8s and our 4s if we want to. We can just play the other 2 aces if we want to here. And with the third 4 showing up in the hand, I think that's pretty tempting. Yeah, get another undercut, and we're going to be able to pick those back up again. Okay, more dodges is good. See if we can get him with the throw after hitting with ace-ace into ace-ace. If he expects us to play like a goobus. And there is that very unfortunate combat loss. Luckily, we don't die. We get another last-ditch effort to find a 2. We don't, but we do find another potential avenue for lethal. Just double check to see how many queens and jacks he's played, but this is pretty much our only way out. We have 2 turns. And happily, we get the first half. We haven't seen any jokers from him yet. So it's possible that he can just prevent this and win right there, but we are going to take this chance. No matter what he does on this next turn or on this bluff, we are playing those two aces. Unfortunately, he does have the jokers. So we spend all of that fuel, but we still have another opportunity. We still have a lethal opportunity in hand here off of a queen into an 8. Or queen into 6, in fact. And we could also always dodge into a throw. So now we need him not to have another 10, and unfortunately he does. So that is, in fact, going to be the game there. Yeah, so with knowing now that he had the 10 and the joker, makes a lot of sense. He preserved the 10 on the last turn because he knew he was in no danger of losing to a queen play on the next turn. Because we had already spent all of our aces, he didn't have to worry or play around us playing ace-ace and just dealing 20 without him being able to joker. So a lot of really careful decision making there, making sure that he found the checkmate. And yes, now we're going to switch to Gloria. I'm going to say, no, okay. We weren't able to finish it out with Midori. Let's just give UTRALAW the respect he deserves, switch to the hard counter pick, and try to finish this off as quickly as we can. Yes, that's right. I am a pure counter picker now with a Troc fallback plan in most formats. Yeah, so why, again, just a very brief discussion of why this matchup is advantage to Gloria. In my mind, I think a lot of people think like, oh, well, she deals out of combat damage and it's in bigger increments than Arg. She has a lot of moves at 2.2 speed. And I think a lot of people put a lot of weight on the first half of that equation of like having the damage of the aces. I put a lot of weight on the second half of the equation, which is just having stuff at 2.2 speed. Being able to dominate at that speed, being able to essentially say you have to play single ace, double ace, or queen in order to contest me in neutral. All of that, and the fact that she can, even if she activates and triggers the bubble shield, she doesn't really need to care, right? Even in a bubble shield situation, she can still heal for 4 a turn, which means that she is still staying even and essentially doesn't have that pressure. I think more than anything, I find the freedom from that psychological pressure of Argarg having that inevitability is the thing that I really enjoy. So we're able to fuse a singleton ace immediately. We have 2 aces in hand. We've got a jack, so we have a lot of ways to apply pressure. We've spent all of our 10s, but I don't really value 10s much as Gloria. I feel like her just blocking and being able to draw 3 cards off of, overdose and the block is fine enough on its own. There's no real need to get crazy with her card engine, in my opinion. But that is probably a side effect of the fact that I pretty much only play Gloria versus Argarg, and that is just typically how I feel in this particular matchup. So, don't go writing any letters. I don't know how true all of that stuff is. So I'm going to leave the Ace of Hearts in the discard because I still have the opportunity to heal for it. And if I heal for it with a 7 in hand, that is a lot of pressure and a lot of dominant attacks. So he knows now that I have 2 aces in hand for sure. And we're going to go try to get in with a throw here. Hopefully we don't get too blown up. Unfortunately, we get a little bit blown up. That's going to deal some damage. And we don't even get the good bluff off. So we're stuck on kind of an awkward hand. We're still within about 10 hit points of our opponent. So I don't mind this particular setup. If I play the healing sphere here, I'm committing to winning with the jack in combat. And if I don't win with the jack in combat, then I've got to heal with aces, which is not ideal. So let's not do that, shall we? So luckily, we get the combat win. We could theoretically just tack on 2 aces. Yeah, there we go. Hold the last one. So we find that damage. We get the life advantage again. We're going to get a fair amount of draws here. 2 from the ace. We get the jack back, so that's essentially a draw. And then we get the healing sphere and the next turn's draw. So all of that put together essentially keeps us card neutral. Actually, it goes up 1 card, even though we emptied our entire hand. So no need to heal here, although we could if we really wanted to, just to pick up the ace. But all of that seems fine. Not having any aces in hand, though, does mean that we are basically a normal character for this next turn. So we definitely want to find some way to spend the heart. Yeah. So not the ideal way to spend the heart. But we're not in danger of dying. Because he comboed, we still get an opportunity to find the ace if we want to. A little surprised that I'm tossing the queen there and keeping the jack. I think maybe just tossing the 5 would have been better, with the relative confidence that I could draw into some non-red card and potentially go for nearly lethal off of the queen into jack into overdose. Really gutsy throws on his part here. So he's dealing with known jack. I'm really just worried about getting ace blocked, so not going to wake up with any attacks there. Does get him to reveal the ace block. Now we can think about whether we want to fetch anything from our discard. We could get maybe an 8 to put the pressure of the throw or dodge on the table. That seems reasonable. We can either throw into fast jack, play fast jack, or just dodge into slow jack, all of which is very, very good. We're playing very defensive here, and he has been taking very good advantage of that by throwing a lot. But eventually, unless you really, really stick to your guns, it becomes very scary to keep doing the same thing over and over again. So by the same token, if you keep doing the same thing over and over again, you're banking on your opponent pattern switching. If you keep losing, you're banking on them switching into a pattern that eventually that your constant pattern is going to win against. And yeah, I just want to make sure that I keep an option where I can dodge. And this is a checkmate situation. I can dodge here with Joker backup, and there is simply nothing he can do about it. Yeah, and there is the acknowledgement. And we get the ace off and finally close out the set. So well played to UTRALAW. We take it 4-2. Definitely very nicely adapted to my Midori play. So good on him. And we advance to round 3 on winner's side. So hopefully you enjoyed these games. Some matchups that I don't typically play, matchups you don't typically see in the standard format, unless Leontes was playing against Frarolo. So until next time, enjoy yourself some Yomi, and yeah, I'll bring you some more matches just as soon as I can. All right, cheers.